Hi, I'm comedian Lunga Chuka the Energizer Funny, streaming live with my special guest on the Price of Fame podcast. We feature entertainment professionals on the show and find out what sacrifices were made to reach their level of success. Look forward to learning about how our guests have overcome mental health challenges, achieved success breakthroughs, what you need to know about the industry, and how you know when you actually have a talent that needs to be shared with the world. Take these episodes as your personal mentorship guidance on how to be a successful entertainer. We chat to those who have made it in South Africa and abroad. Let's make the SA entertainment industry the most supported by locals, because local talent is liquor talent. Subscribe now to keep up to date. You can also find us on all social platforms. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Price of Fame. My name is Lunga Chuka, and I'll be your host. Of course, that's where you'll find me. Thank you, ladies and gents, for tuning in to another episode of The Price of Fame. We are at our second last episode before we wrap up season 2. It's been a journey, and thank you so much for each and every one of you guys who've been supporting since season 1 straight up to season 2. And welcome to all our new followers and the supporters for season 2. Thank you so much, guys. Stay tuned for season 3. What? In 2023. What? Ladies and gents, my name is Lunga Chuka. I'll be your host. And tonight's guest, it was episode 32. Tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen, is a South African gem as well as a living legend. He started his career back in the 80s, ladies and gents, and he's an multiple award-winning international music theater director as well as producer. And most important of all, he's a storyteller who has told stories that have moved the whole world. Ladies and gents, without further ado, please welcome to the screen the legend himself. He goes by the name of David Kramer. Legend in the house. Good evening to you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm super excited to just getting to learn about you, because we've always seen your work, we've witnessed your work, and we grew up to a lot of your work as well. So I'm super excited and honored to have you on the show tonight, and I'm sure my guests are also looking forward to getting as if you haven't given us enough already. We want more from you, David. So we like to learn about your journey, the road you took, where you came from, what it took to get to the position that you are today. And we'd love to learn from that. So a huge thank you for coming onto the platform. I really do hope that this is going to add some value to you too.
Thank you very much. So where do you want to start? Do you want to throw a question my way and we can get talking?
We can get straight into it, sir. So first things first, with season 2, The Price of Fame has done something a little different, because yes, we always do the live streaming, but we've learned that some people prefer the audio version when it comes to podcast too. So we've added now The Price of Fame onto our audio streams as well. So we use Anchor FM, we use Apple and Spotify. So with Anchor FM, we have a special feature now where people can send us voice notes and actually ask your question. So we have actually one voice note that came through from a fan and they want to ask you a question. But don't worry, before we bring the questions to the show, we actually go through it so that it's nothing weird or anything weird, strange like that. So we have a voice note that came through to you. I'm going to give that person the opportunity to ask their question first, and then we go straight into our conversation, okay? All right,
Okay.
Pum, cue the voice note. Just waiting for
Hey,
Pumi to
it's
cue the
Lilo
voice
here.
note.
I just want to say that I'm a huge fan of you, David. My grandmother is also one of your biggest fans, and she'd always tell me, if ever you get a chance to ask a question on the show, she wanted me to ask you, what is your fondest memory of Taliep Petersen?
Oh, well, I worked so many years with Talib. Talib and I had a long, long friendship. I knew him for more than 30 years. And um, I suppose my fondest memory of Talib is really when we were in the studio together and making music together. He, he was a very, had a big energy. And he loved, he got excited about music and he got excited about stories. And we would laugh a lot. There was, so especially in the studio when we were exploring new ideas, we were both guitar players, Talib and I. But when we created the music together, he would sit at the piano. I had a piano in my studio in those years, and then I would have written a lyric, and then Talib will take the lyric, almost like Bernie Taupin and Elton John, and he would sit down at the piano, and then he would start, kind of just noodling around, kind of finding a chord and this, and then maybe a sense of a melody for the words. So those are my, those are my almost best memories of when we were at our um, creative best, let's say, and it was the two of us in my studio at the piano. Um, and then working together for an hour and a half or 2 hours and coming away from a session like that and being excited that you've perhaps created uh, a new song that you just had a feeling this song is going to be a good one. It's going to be a good day. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, wow. I can only picture the things that you're describing, and like us growing up to the art that you guys have produced, it's so amazing to hear the stories of, the backstories, how you guys would just inspire each other and feed off each other. That's so awesome. I have a silly question that I want to start with, and I want to get it out of the way, I'm talk about the David Kramer swag. Do you know what's the David Kramer swag? The hat, the little tie, the shirt, and the khaki pants. Like the outfit that the outfit that you chose for yourself. Your signature outfit. Is there any story to it, or is it just your way of like dressing? You like the way?
Yeah, look, it started right in the beginning. So what happened was I was at university in England, at Leeds University, and I, at that time, started to write my first songs while I was overseas, in the David Cromer style, the South African accent that my accent and
Yeah.
my stories that I was telling. But at that time, as a student, I was still very much under the influence of contemporary fashion. So I had very long hair, uh, you know, yeah, like a kind of hippie look, with bell-bottom trousers, and I looked like any other kind of young, cool, hip person in that
Yeah.
time. But when I came home and I started to really get serious about what I was doing, it struck me that that my look the way I was dressing was not really reflecting the kind of music that I was making, the songs and the stories I was telling, and the persona that I was projecting, which was me. Um, I mean, I think later on the divergence between who I am and who the persona became. So then one evening I was in the bath and I put my head in the water, and when I came out of the water and my hair was all slicked back with, and I looked in the mirror, and suddenly I didn't have long hair anymore. I had this wet hair, and and it reminded me of photographs that I'd seen of my father and my uncle from the 1930s, when they had a middle path and sort of brill creamed hair. And I thought to myself, oh, that would be I'd have to be very brave to cut my hair and walk around like that. Um, and so that's what I did. That was the first thing that I did. I cut my hair, combed it in a middle parting, and the hair was brill creamed back. This is before the hats. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, long before the hats. And then I started to think about, it's, I didn't want to come across as a kind of a, a Californian, at that time, kind of Crosby, Stills and Nash and Joni Mitchell and that whole sort of Californian hippie thing. Um, I didn't want to be associated with that. And like so many other South Africans that I knew, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a bit of a, for me, I could never really get my head around the fact that people were just imitating Americans. And okay, some of the British artists as well, but mainly American artists they were imitating. And I was
Mm.
on a search for authenticity, for originality and authenticity. And so I started to think, well, I'm not going to wear blue jeans anymore. I'm not going to wear tackies.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wear t-shirts. So that's where I started to change my outfit. I started to wear the white shirt with the rolled up sleeves.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I, I had a South African Railways waistcoat, a black waistcoat. I had the little narrow tie. Um, Again, in that time, uh, white males in South Africa were wearing like those big ties, with a big knop knot.
Yes. Was it some more?
So I had a,
Some
I
more.
had a very like, I had a very little punk leopard skin tie, and then I couldn't really find the trouser look that I wanted. I knew I wanted very baggy trousers, so I went to Cape Union Mart, and I bought some khaki trousers, which were extra large, and I'm a small person, and they would have fitted a very big Karoo farmer, I would say. And so these trousers, I pulled on and with a belt around my waist, and so I had these big baggy trousers. And the shoes originally, I went up to, I was interested in the street fashion of Diagonal Street up in Johannesburg. And so black fashion then was like Argyle socks and Floorsham shoes. And so I wore Argyle socks and Floorsham shoes. I had the pants from the Karoo. I had the waistcoat from the railways. I had my uncle and father's hairstyle. And so I was an amalgamation of
Yeah.
various South African fashion
Ah,
influences. That's how it came about. And then later on, the red Velschooner, that was a gift from a friend of mine who said, no, you mustn't wear those brown leather shoes. You must wear these red Velschooner with the tire soles. And so I started wearing those in the 1980s, and I made Velschooner a fashion item in those years. And it's interesting today for me to see how much of a fashion item velskoene have become again.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's quite
that
cool. It's cool to wear. It's cool to wear velskoene now, but in
that's
those
so.
years, in those years, people laughed at me. That I was seen as a clown. Somebody who didn't really.
It's crazy because I mean that whole outfit, the way you describe it now, will work today as well. It's just that the only thing I would change is the pants being a lot fitted, a little more fitted as opposed to baggy. But that same outfit, the way you describe it, I would wear it
Yeah,
today,
but
and it would like still
yeah,
like
yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I mean, now it's fit. It's much tighter. The look is much leaner. It's much more
yes,
now. Now the look is slimline, and it's more kind of like early '60s pop, like the mod look from the early '60s in
yeah,
Britain, with the sort of tight stovepipe pants, and everything was tighter and small. I went in a different direction. Mine was tight on the top and very loose and baggy at the bottom. But it will come back. It can't stay a slim line for very long or cut for very long, and it can't stay baggy for very long because the
yeah,
fashion industry is constantly trying to sell you a new look, another look. So in a few seasons' time, you'll see that men won't wanting to wear their trousers as short or as tight or as whatever. It changes. I in a sense, because I created my own fashion,
yeah,
I didn't have to bother with any of that. I didn't have to look like I was cool in terms of the fashion magazines. I
yes,
was
yes.
I became David Kramer, and that was it. And I created my own iconic look, which I can still wear to this day.
Absolutely.
The hats came later, and not
Yeah,
because I don't have, the hats. Just I like hats, and I started wearing Homburgs and Stetsons, and this little hat, which is the one that's perhaps most associated with me, is called a pork pie, and it's an American hat that I first came across in New York in the 1980s, late 1980s. And it's a jazz hat. Jazz musicians from the 1940s, 50s used
yes,
to like wearing
yes.
this pork pie.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. I love it. You mentioned something about the Karoo, and I see there you also at the KKNK festival, with the Klein Karoo Nationale Festival.
Mhm.
Could you please describe what was your experience, because obviously that was different music to you, and how did that kind of music influence you, and what was your experience like at the KKNK festival?
How do you mean? How did that music influence? I'm
The
not sure
Klein
which music
Karoo.
you're talking about. Yeah, but okay, the Clan Karoo. But you not? Are you talking about the Karoo Kitaar Blues project I did, or are
The
you
the the
talking? Which one are you talking about? Okay, so I started going to the KKNK, Kaka and Ka, um, uh,
yeah,
a year after it started. I don't know when that was, but it was a long time ago. And I started performing there, and so I did different shows there, different kinds of concerts. At one point, I did the Die Ballade van Koos Sas, a musical that I wrote. I did there, but I mostly performed either on my own or with my band. But I think what I perhaps would like to point out was that I was probably the first uh, person to bring my band was I was the only white person in my band. Everyone else was let's call colored or black or whatever you want to call them. So I introduced a different I think for the audiences at the Kaka and Car, it was a very white affair to start with,
yeah,
and I felt that that needed to change, and I did as much as I could to change, who came with me to the Kaka and Car, And then I introduced a lot of artists to the Karoo as well. But particularly I suppose my most successful project was bringing the the folk musicians from the Karoo in that concert series I did called Karoo Kitaar Blues, in
Yeah.
which I introduced people from Namaqualand, people from Beaufort West and Karoo, and like Hannes could see with the teaspoon slide guitar from Herbertsdale, and so that's what I did at Karoo.
Yeah,
If
I
that
guess
answers, is that
yeah,
your
yeah.
question?
Yes, also like the music from the like you said from the guys from the Karoo, was their music
Yeah.
slightly different to what you were used to? And like how did you like fuse that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, no, absolutely. I mean, I was on coming from university. As again, let's go back to that point again. When I came from university, I had this idea that I needed to, my songwriting, I wanted to root it in an authentic South African music, and in the
Okay.
way that like Johnny Clegg did. Johnny Clegg was able to work with Sipho and learn how to play the Zulu Maskandi guitar. And he spoke Zulu, and so he was totally immersed in Zulu culture. I did not grow up with anything like that. And the only sort of roots reference that I had was Afrikaans music from the farms, uh,
Yeah.
the old the volksliedjies that I'd heard as a kid. And so I decided that that would be the kind of inspiration for a lot of the work that I was going to do.
Yeah.
And so many years later, when I got the opportunity to travel around the country with a documentary filmmaker called Jan Horn, um, we started to meet people in these very small towns, people who played what I would call eccentric Karoo guitar styles or Namaqualand guitar
Mm.
styles. I had not come into contact with that before. It had never been recorded. It wasn't something you could find anywhere. It was a kind of a secret that only the community knew about. And
Yeah.
I suppose what I did was I was so excited by the guitar playing styles that I heard and the folk songs that I heard, like when I met Sina Mowers and her sister Helena Nieuwegeld, who sang these really interesting songs, which were kind of about their own lives, but also fragments of other older folk songs. I got very, very excited with that. And when I met Hannes Kutsia, who played this the teaspoon slide, I knew
Yeah.
that I'd never seen anything like that. And I knew that no one else in the world had ever played slide guitar with a teaspoon. So I brought them on stage with me. I introduced them to my audience, and and people
Wow.
just went absolutely crazy for this, and it became an international phenomena, to the point
Wow.
where Hannes was invited to go and teach his technique in the
Wow.
USA, and so Hannes and I went to Seattle. I can't remember which year, but some around about 2003 to 2004, about 20 years ago, we went to America, and we went to a slide guitar conference which lasted a week, and I was Hannes doesn't speak English, so I was the interpreter, and I carried the suitcases. I did the interpretation. Hannes did. He was the star. I was nobody.
So, and
It,
you introduced him to all of this, And now they're like, now like you carrying his bags and all of that. They would have never known if you didn't give him the platform. So that's funny and that's crazy.
Everybody wanted
So
to, everybody was all around Hannes, and I was just the guy on the side who came with him. It was
hilarious.
good.
Uh,
It's good to have that humbling experience.
Absolutely, I guess, absolutely. So, please, I'm dying to know about your upbringing. Who was a young, can you paint a picture of a very young David Kramer before all of this? Where did you grow up? What was your vibe like in the household? What schools did you go to? What was your upbringing like?
Oh, it was terrible. I grew up in apartheid.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Ooh.
yeah, I was born.
Yeah,
I was born 3 years after apartheid came into being. Officially, all the laws, So I went to. We were designated as white people, and I went to a white school, a Christian National Afrikaans education. It was
yeah,
pretty hectic. I didn't enjoy it very much. They wanted you to be a soldier, so they put you into cadet training. They liked you to play rugby. I didn't play rugby very well. I was better as a mascot than as a rugby player. So yeah, so I was I was an English speaking boy in an Afrikaans environment, and not an easy environment for me as a sort of an artistic person. Luckily, in our school there was an opportunity to study art, and we had an art school in the. I grew up in Worcester in the Boerland. Worcester, I didn't tell you that, but yeah, so I grew up in Worcester, and I luckily was able to go to an art school called the Huguenot Art School, and that was a wonderful had a wonderful influence on me and taught me to think like an artist. And
yeah.
yeah, so my inclination was always towards art and painting and music and so on. My brother is a very good um, painter, artist. Yeah, so my brother and I are very lean towards the arts. Um,
Mm,
and so yeah, so I was about 6 or 7 years old when, I heard rock and roll on the radio, and my brother bought a record player, a little record player, and we bought rock and roll records. So the early influences were Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, Elvis Presley. This was before the Beatles and before the Rolling Stones. So the early rock and roll in the 1950s, early Beatles and Stones arrived. So I liked all that, and as a kid, I was trying. I just wanted to perform like those people, and so as a child, you do what children do, and you pretend to be someone in your parents' lounge or wherever. And but then as a teenager, I started to learn to play the guitar. Uh, a friend of my brother's showed me a few chords, and and in those days, hardly anybody, like in my school, played the guitar. There were a few boys, and those few boys, I mean, there were some older boys, and they formed a band. And then there was me, and I had a friend. I taught him to play, and then I formed a band uh, with my friend and another guy who played the drums. And I can tell you funny stories about that, but not today. We've got too much to get through, I think. So yeah, so I grew up in that rather repressive old apartheid environment in Worcester. Then I luckily was able to get a scholarship, and I went to study overseas. I went to become a textile designer. I studied designing, and I came back to work in the factory after university. I had to go back to the town I came from because that's where the textile factory was that sponsored me. And
Yeah.
then I met a young man at that time who worked with me in the factory. His name was Danny Trump. He would have been labeled as a colored person, and he was interested in poetry, and he wrote interesting vernacular poetry, and we started performing together. I sang my songs, and Danny recited his poetry. This was in the mid 1970s, and it was quite. We couldn't do it publicly. We did it in people's houses because, it wasn't an easy time for people of color to work together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that started then already with me, and I've always created and worked across the color lines. Right from when I was in my 20s.
Very interesting. And I know, like you said, it was apartheid, it was very difficult. And it was a very difficult era, especially, and it affected everyone, even in music. Even though sometimes you could, like you said, you could introduce a couple of people to the stages, it was still there's limitations of you can't play this stage. Like you said, you had to do performances in people's homes or private little performances. Can
Mm.
you describe some of the backlash that you experienced back in the day because you were working with people of color? What was some of the backlash that you got either from media or event owners or even just other musicians? Did you have any of those experiences?
Well, once I started recording, when I started recording, I was there was an immediate backlash from the SABC. I mean, my work was banned. The very first album that I released, which was called Bakga, um, I released that in the early 1980s, 1981, and that was immediately banned in its entirety. So the authorities were not very happy with what I was doing, but at the same time, you could find ways to perform, and that wasn't too difficult. But as far as getting on the radio, and um, which was necessary if you wanted to, become known.
Yeah,
So yeah, so it didn't start out very well for me in that way. But then, I mean, I wrote quite a variety of songs, and then very shortly after that banning, I wrote a song called Hakom Blokkies, which became a #1 hit, which was about an old rugby player. And then I followed that with a song called Royal Hotel, which people will remember and are still singing to this day. You said Imana in the Royal Hotel. And that was a hit across all, it wasn't just kind of like on white radio. It was a hit across the color lines. And yeah, and people could identify with that song, despite it didn't kind of have a quality of just being, like a white experience. I think people could read into it whatever they wanted to. And
yeah,
so I became very famous because of those early songs. And then I got given the Volkswagen, the microbus, Volksy bus. I became part of those advertisements in the 1980s and into the 90s. And I became very well known because I was on those Volksy bus ads.
yeah.
You might be too young to remember. I don't know, but I became a household name uh, because I appeared on television in those ads. The backlash was that I didn't really get very much opportunity to perform on television.
Okay.
Um, they didn't like my style. My style was too, it, the straat Afrikaans. It was down there. It wasn't
Yeah,
Ronne Moontjie. It wasn't standaard Afrikaans soos hulle dit
yeah,
in Pretoria praat nie. It was it had a very kind of street cops um, feel to it. That's the way I spoke Afrikaans, and that's the way I recorded it. I wasn't pretending or trying to be anything posh, or yeah. I was always looking for a kind of an honesty, and I think people recognized that in me. They saw that that what I was doing, they could recognize themselves and other real people that they knew. And I certainly wasn't singing um, love songs about hoe mooi is die voeltjies en die berge en die brand en
Yeah.
ons stap op die strand hand in hand. I didn't sing anything like that. My songs were about real people, like a person like Piet Bedien, you know, who hy ruik soos paraffin, and you know, so real people, you know, real people in real situations. That was where I found um, that I was so different to everything else that was happening, that I stood out because of that, and I became very popular because I was writing story songs about real characters and real people, which led me to start working on the musicals because I wanted to write stories.
That's Yeah, I was actually about to ask you, like, at what point did you go from just doing the music into the musical theater? Because, like you're saying, and like a lot of your music is storytelling, you know. So obviously, to add to it would then to add to people's imagination was obviously moving to the musical theater. How was that shift for you? What inspired you to go into musical theater?
Yeah, I suppose what inspired me was really I was working in the theater. I was performing concerts, and I went up to the Market Theatre in Johannesburg, and I had a good friend in a theatre director called Barney Simon, and he said to me, "You know, you're not a pop singer. You're a storyteller, and you know you should your songs. You could let other people sing your songs as well. You could take some of the songs that you've written for yourself and you could change them, like, you know, female actors could actually sing some of your songs." And so we did a show together in 1985, in which I had Elsabe Zitzman and Jennifer Stein join me in the show, and they sang some of my songs from like a female character perspective. And I found that really liberating and inspiring. And then Barney also said to me, "Nee, you write about stories, you write characters, and you know," uh, and I and I thought, well, it'd be quite nice to explore my songwriting, not just write for myself, that I'm the only person singing these songs, but maybe write for other characters instead of writing about a character. Instead of like looking at a character and describing that character, I could step into the character's shoes and I could speak as if I was the character and then find an actor who could sing that. And then that, of course, immediately leads to something which is musical, a musical story in which there are characters and they sing their feelings and their songs. And so I had been very famous as David Kramer for 5 years. And I was exhausted with all of that. I was burnt out. I had been doing too many concerts and traveling around and being away from home for too long. Um, and I decided I would like to just take a year away from the stage, and I would like to just sit at home and write. And so in 1986, that's what I started to do. I decided I was going to write a musical, although I knew nothing about writing musicals, nothing whatsoever. Uh, so I went to see, I'd never even really watched musicals up until that point. So I got myself on an aeroplane and I went to London and I went to look at musicals to see if I could understand what this was about. And then I came back and I had this idea of writing a musical set in District 6. And I started working on that. And then I realized that politically that wasn't a very good idea, and that I would need to work with somebody from District 6. And that's when I happened to meet my friend Taliep Petersen, and we started talking, and I thought, oh, he's the right guy to work with. And I told him I was wanting to write a musical, and he said yes, he also very keen on writing a musical. So we both, we were both just on the same wavelength right from the first day, and we got together and we started exploring what we might do together, and we were very well matched because he was a great musician. He had a wonderful ear for melody and for harmony and arrangement. And so he played the guitar very well, and he sang beautifully. And I played the guitar okay. I don't sing beautifully, but my strength is words. So Taliep Taliep wasn't really great at writing lyrics or stories. He never wrote stories. He just that became that partnership of where I've did the lyrics and Taliep did the music, and he arranged the music, and then I ended up directing the musicals, staging them and so on. So that's how I got into that.
You guys sound like a powerhouse back in the day, unstoppable. And I mean, like these stories, and these like the District 6 and all of that. It was really a hit among. I don't know with white people because I didn't grow up among white people, but I know among people of color, those stories, your names was always being mentioned, the shows and things like that. Some of my friends' parents even had the privilege to attend some of these plays and things like that. So it's really, and I hope a lot of them are watching and getting excited to actually hear how it all started. What was the work that was put in behind the scene, how it came together. It's actually really beautiful to learn all of that. And with you being with you being in the industry since, I mean, the 80s, and you've seen the industry change and progress, and you've seen some things that you weren't comfortable with, and obviously there were some things that blew your mind. With your experience and in your journey, what would you say the industry is still missing to make it a comfortable experience for artists? Or are you happy with the way it is running now currently?
I have no dealings with the industry at the moment, or I haven't had for many years now. I kind of dropped out of the recording industry in the 80s already.
Okay.
I had a huge success as a recording artist in the 80s, as you said, but then I went into the musical theater in 1986, and I've really remained there. That is what I've done. I mean, Taliep and I did it for 20 years until he got murdered. And then I've continued to do it on my own. And in between, I've recorded and released some albums, post that. So there are quite a few David Kramer albums after those big years in the early 80s. But that was the time that I was very involved in recording and performing and so on. Then I changed direction into the musicals and started writing the musicals and directing the musicals, which is what I really like doing now. So I don't take, I mean, I'm not really interested in what's going on these days. Also, with streaming of music, and because we have no say in our work with streaming, it's not been a healthy situation for artists like myself.
Mm,
So there's very little incentive to get involved in recording when the only way you can make money off that is through minuscule amounts of royalties that come off the streaming platforms. So the streaming platforms are doing very well, and yeah, they work very well for the people that own the streaming platforms, but for small individual interesting artists, it's there's no money anymore. There's no money in the recording industry. So unless you become a major star like Taylor Swift or the big stars that some big American record label or big labels, decide to get behind. The days of the kind of success that I had uh, as a solo and self-produced artist are gone.
yeah,
So I don't think it's easy for. I think it's easy to get your music on the internet, but
yeah,
nobody listens to it.
yeah,
Everyone's putting their music on the internet all the time, every day. People are sitting at home with their Apple Macs and producing music and putting it out on whatever streaming platform they're on. You might be lucky and have a Jerusalem or something like that, but there's very little of that happening.
mm,
So I prefer to work in the theatre where I can still sell a ticket. If people want to see my work, they have to buy a theatre ticket. They have to sit in a seat. They have to have an incredible experience,
yeah.
and it's real. It's a very different kind of world. So yes, so I don't have much advice in that area for you and for young artists, I'm afraid.
Okay, so
But
okay, how,
my advice would be, this is what my advice would be. Of course, and the problems that we still have is lack of originality. I mean, people are still too
mm,
influenced by, they haven't found their own voice or their own style. You see it occasionally, but a lot of it's not very interesting. To me, as an old person, I
yeah,
yeah, but so seems to be a lack of originality, and it's all. Yeah. But I mean, I know I sound like an old person when it comes to that.
no,
But
no, I mean,
I grew up in a golden era of of songwriting. I grew up,
yeah,
as I said, I was born with rock and roll. I grew up in the 60s and I matured as a songwriter in the 1970s. I mean, those were, in terms of pop and songwriting, it was the golden era. After that, in my opinion, it never reached the same heights.
mm. No, that's absolutely true. I mean, even I listen to a lot of hip hop, and also R&B and all those things, and like it's like you're saying, and I'm also love storytelling because with my comedy, my version of comedy is storytelling. I want to paint a picture, I'm going to do impersonations and I'm going to do a little bit of sound effects here and there to give you the proper experience. And when I indulge in material that is not storytelling really, or it's not original really, I feel like it's like a waste of time because I'm like, you have this opportunity to tell a beautiful story, and everyone is beautiful and they have something to share, but then you get this like the standard or the trend or whatever, then you hardly get to experience real stories anymore. So I don't resonate with a lot of um hip hop music that is released today because the hip hop music that I grew up to was a lot of storytellers, and they spoke about growing up. They spoke about what it's like living in the house, with
Yeah.
two parents. one parent, or where the thing where it's struggling to ends to meet, what's like growing up in the hood, what it's like being in the music industry, the influences, and also just having the opportunity to inspire people. So
Yeah,
when people don't use the platform like that, I kind of like lose interest when it's just a beat or anything like that.
yeah,
So I don't think it's a old perspective, like you said. I think it's just a preference in terms of what moves you, because you'll get
yeah,
people who'll actually enjoy that the other version of things, You and I will be like, yeah, no, it's not feeding.
yeah. Look, I think a lot of what I see is people are chasing fame. They're trying to be
Yeah.
famous. They and they're looking for the formula for that. They're thinking, oh, wow, that's working. This guy's doing that. This is, oh, look, this is cool and all. But then by the time you try and do that, it's too late already because it wasn't. You're following in the slipstream of something else. So you're chasing fame, and you're wasting your time chasing fame because really what you should be doing is finding your own voice, is finding what it is you want to say and how you want to say it. And it could be in any of the, it could be rap, hip hop, it could be whatever you're going to do, that you find a medium that speaks about from you, from your heart, about you, and whatever. Yeah, like the early hip hop stuff. I mean, with those guys, Tupac and Biggie, and I mean, yeah, in Cape Town there was Prophets of the City and Black Noise and so on. Well, good stuff. Good original
Yeah.
uh, people speaking of their own lives and their own trauma and yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
it's not. Uh, it's You and I are interested in storytelling. Of course, not everybody is, so that's fine.
Yeah, to each his own. I got two more before we wrap this up. Two more questions. My second last one is I would love to know. I mean, in your amazing journey that you've experienced so much amazing things, and you've opened so many doors and you've broke so many stigmas and barriers, I would like to know for you personally, what is your biggest achievement or what is your most iconic moment in your music journey that you would always remember, and when you think about it, it always puts a smile on your face?
Okay, so I think that the biggest one for me was we had got to London with Cat and the Kings, the musical Cat and the Kings, and then we got onto the West End in London, and we were performing there, and then President Mandela came to see the show,
Ah,
and at interval he got on stage and he made a very very moving speech
wow.
about about South Africa apartheid, and also the kind of that this story that we were telling about a young group of vocal harmony singers, who had suffered the injustices of apartheid, uh, and weren't allowed they weren't really allowed to achieve what they could have achieved had the laws not been against them. So he made a very moving speech about that, and then he thanked all of us for doing what we had done, and he called us all onto the stage and he embraced us on the stage. So that moment of having, Taliep and I having our own musical on the West End stage in London, which is the place to do musical theatre, and having, Nelson Mandela, pay tribute to you in front of an audience was, I suppose, the highlight, and difficult to
Yeah.
top. The other would have been. There were many. Look, I met many famous people and so on, but the other, I think, big moment for us was just the opening night uh, on Broadway in New
Yeah.
York, opening the musical there. and I had the whole treatment, with limousines and red carpet, and yeah, that all. I mean, that stays with you. That stays with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Just kind of, it's like you're living in a dream. It's not something I ever thought would happen. I
Mm.
wasn't chasing after going to Broadway, but I found myself there. And yeah, so that was, those are moments, I mean, I hung out with Paul Simon, yeah, in Cape Town at one point. I took the Karoo musicians that we spoke about earlier. Those Karoo, I mean, we I got them to play for Oprah Winfrey, yeah, um, uh, in Cape Town, and Mandela, and yeah.
That's That's crazy. Wow, wow, wow. I can only imagine what these moments actually feel like. Because, like you said, it was never in your bucket list. You were just focusing on your own thing, telling your stories and your own music. And next thing you know, look where it's taking you, and look at the shoulders that you're rubbing, and the people that you're
Yeah.
meeting. And that's
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And my advice to your listeners and young people who are artistically inclined and want to do say something and create work and be a But so my advice to you would be, you have to do the work.
yeah.
Create. Just focus on your work. Don't chase the fame. Don't be looking over your shoulder or looking at what other people are doing all the time, and measuring yourself against other people. You just got to do the best work that you possibly can do, and the work will be your vehicle. The work will take you there. That's, you really just have to do. But people are reluctant to do the work. They're waiting
Mm,
for a lucky break or something else. They're waiting for to be discovered when they haven't even done the work. And
mm,
Taliep and I never stopped working. We just worked and worked. We wrote. I mean, I've written 12 musicals already, and I've released God knows how many albums. But that only comes out of. It doesn't come out of luck. The luck comes out of the work.
mm.
But so yeah, so focus on your work, and focus on being on making connections, and being able to perform your work in front of audiences. Yeah.
Wow, that's so awesome. And that's so true. I mean, it's so true. It's what I believe too, just focus on you, do your work, and do you. Tell the thing is, and it's like I like what you mentioned earlier on. People watch other people and they'll be like, oh, he did this and he did that. Let me jump onto that. Not knowing the whole journey that this person did to get to
That's
that
right.
part,
That's the
And
point.
then
That what they did came from their own experience and a place of honesty for them, which is not a place of honesty for you. So
exactly,
that's the difference. You might see similarities in other people's experience, but your experience is unique. It's absolutely
yes,
unique. And so you've got to concentrate on your experience and do the work around what you know best, and stop
yeah,
trying to imitate and copy, because then you just are a sad version of something else, you know?
exactly. And they don't understand the reason why they're even looking at these people that's growing and shining is because they being themselves. Now you want to copy what they're doing as if it's some kind of formula. Actually just be yourself and someone else will see and appreciate you as well. Otherwise, like you said, you just become another version, and then other versions we're gonna see which version do we like the most, as opposed to you standing out, and being like,
Yeah,
okay, you're creating a
absolutely.
space. So my last question for you, Mr. Kramer. Thank you so much also for coming onto the show. I really enjoyed having a chat with you. My last question before I let you go is the one that I ask all my guests. And with this one, I'm going to put you in a time machine. And I want to dial it back to a time, to a younger version of yourself. You can pick the time. So it's the David Kramer of today, right? Having walked the journey that you've walked, learned all the lessons and everything, and you're gonna go back to a version of yourself which is a way lot younger, maybe a time when you needed some advice or some guidance, especially on the path that you were going on. I would love to know the version of you today. What would you say if I gave you 5 minutes to give some encouraging words to the younger version of yourself? What would those words be like?
I think I've just said it. That's. I mean, what we just spoke about now is what I would say to myself. And luckily, as I say, I had a brother who's 5 years older than me. So I had an artist. I mean, he told me when I was still a teenager, uh, and it's what I would tell someone today. He told me, and this is a long time ago. He just said, "Stop worrying about what's happening in New York or LA or London. Stop worrying about trying." I mean, at that time, I was very influenced by kind of like the Beatles and that kind of stuff, and I wanted to be a rock and roll star artist, whatever. I kind of wanted to be a rock and roller, but
Yeah,
obviously, I'm not a rock and roller. And he was saying, it's you wanting to run away from this place that we are growing up in. And it seems boring and a difficult environment for us. But if you look at it with fresh eyes, it's not. It's a very interesting place. You've got to look at your surroundings, and you've got to try and see what it is that's unique and different about how you have grown up. And so I can't escape where I was born or how I grew up, but I used that to fuel my work. And
yeah,
so I started to write songs about the very things that I wanted to almost run away from, because it wasn't the glitzy, glamorous kind of world that I imagined I should be part of. So by embracing that side of my experience, I actually created work that spoke to so many other hundreds of thousands of people that had a similar feel or a similar experience, similar sense of what it was like for
yeah,
them. Yeah. And so yes, so that is the big advice, and is to um, is, is to accept
mm,
yourself, explore yourself, and don't talk about it. It's no use talking about it so much. Just do the work. Whatever it is you're doing. If you're a painter, then paint. If you're a poet, then write poetry. And if you want to tell a story or make a film, then don't talk about that big monster movie you're going to make, which is going to be better than anything that you've seen on Netflix. Or, just pick up a little video camera, make a 10-minute film or a 5-minute film. But if you want to be a filmmaker, you've got to start making the films, stop talking about it.
yeah, yeah. Do it. Don't talk about it. Be about it. Mr. Kramer, thank you so much for allowing us to have you as a guest on the Price of Fame. I truly enjoyed having a conversation with you, and I've learned so much. And like I said, I got what I wanted. Because I've always heard these stories, seen the work that you guys produce, and to hear the backstory behind it, just makes me learn a lot, also from an artist point of view as well. So thank you
Mm.
so much for sharing everything
Thank
with
you.
us.
No, it's been a
Um,
pleasure talking to you, Lunga. Thank you.
thank
Thank you.
you so
Thanks
much.
for having me on the show. All the best to
Absolutely.
you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye
Before I
bye.
let you go, is there anything that I didn't give you the opportunity to share that you maybe just want to share before?
No, we had a great conversation. It was That's fine. I prefer just being able to talk like that. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm going to say good night to you. May you have a lovely evening further. Thank you so much.
Right. To you too, and your team. And your.
Right. You were still saying goodbye. Oh, my word, guys. You must learn to give let them finish. Don't nip the, don't nip my guests, okay? Because they're gonna think it's me. They'll be like, "Yeah, why'd you nip me at the end?" All right, ladies and gents, thank you so much for tuning in. I know a lot of you guys were actually looking forward to hearing Mr. David Kramer's story. I'm glad that we got opportunity to speak to him without being interrupted by load shedding. And I think we just had a little bit of glitches with the delay thing. But yeah, we moved over that, and that's what comes with these streaming platforms. But you know what it is? That's why we say that's the price of fame. Like I said, ladies and gents, this is the second last episode. My last episode will be next week. I don't want to tell you who the guest is. I want you to get excited about it. So check it out. You guys want to follow me on my social platforms? You can catch me on Facebook at Lunga Chuka the Energizer Funny. That is Lunga Chuka the Energizer Funny. On Instagram, that is at Lunga Chuka. Simple. I don't know why you're following me. I don't know why you're not following me. So simple. Just at Lunga Chuka. Just click once and boom, be friends. Best friends, you know. I will automatically follow you back. Do the things. And if you want some exclusive snippets of the Price of Fame, you can go to Instagram as well, where we have a page called the Price of Fame ZA. There you'll catch the snippets of season 1 right through to season 2. And then if you go to the link in the bio, it takes you straight to my YouTube channel, where I have the extended episodes of season 1 right up to season 2. If you love this interview, I promise you, you will love everyone else's stories, because everyone has got an amazing story and we definitely learn from them. Ladies and gents, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Lunga Chuka. I've been your host, and this is The Price of Fame.